Hello everybody. I just wanted to do a short video on the idea of personal sovereignty in free men and women. And there's a huge movement going on that's been gaining momentum for quite a while, and it's what's known as the freeman on the land movement, or the sovereign movement, as it's known mostly here in the United States. And what I'm going to be telling here is basically sort of a rebuttal to a very skewed report by CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Company. And they basically used it as a scare campaign to lump all people who are trying to assert their freedoms into a terrorist group. And the reason that they use this argument is because of a couple of individuals who decided that becoming a free individual and divorcing themselves from their straw man apparatus they used it wrong. There was one incident where this guy, he didn't do his homework, and he just assumed that by asserting his freedoms, that gave him the right to go seize other people's property with no lawful basis. And so him and his girlfriend decided to squat in a house that was actually owned by somebody else, not the state. And there were no provisions for him to do so. And in reality, the property was owned by somebody else. Well, then he was served with an eviction notice and kicked out, and he blamed other people for his terrible actions. And this is one example. But what he didn't do was his due diligence. He didn't find out what properties fell into the category that would give him the right to squat on them and then send in a notice of ownership. He just did it without doing any homework. I know personally from living in Detroit, there is a squatter's law there where any property that's owned by the states can be squatted on, and you can live there for 7 years and it becomes yours by right. And this is a case where that would actually work. But you don't bring your free man on the land right into that. It's just something anybody can do. And so for CBC to link the two is rather lazy, I think, because they ignore the fact that that is legal for anyone to do given the right circumstances and given the law being in your favor. If you just go to somebody's house just because they're on vacation and say, I'm going to squat here and I'm going to take their property, and because I sent a notice in that gives me the right, and if they don't respond, then it's mine, it's foolish, because it's ignoring the rights of others. And it's just jumping to conclusions that were never intended in the first place. There was no 7 years. People think that they can do this, and they might be okay for 90 days, but it's not going to work unless you have the legal code already in your favor. And if it's not there, if the framework isn't even there to begin with, you can't do it. But anyway, that was one example that they pulled out of the hat and tried to link with people who were in the freedom movement. And then another one that they pull out of the hat was a case where, I believe in Missouri or Arkansas, there were a son and his father were stopped for not having a proper license plate, and the incident probably would not have gone very far, simply because he had documents and he presented the documents, and 9 times out of 10 he still would have got away, but he would have either got a warning or a ticket, and then he would have had to go to court. But what happened was the son came out of the passenger side with an AK-47 and shot both police dead. And while this is tragic, what it highlights is the common misconception that because someone asserts their rights, that gives them the right to act with impunity. And this is not true. Just because someone wants to assert their rights and get back to the natural law, which is a legal thing to do under U.S. Code, it's called the organic law, then that doesn't give a person the right to act in a criminal manner, to quote-unquote exercise their rights. One of the things that comes with exercising rights is understanding that you have responsibility, that you're an adult, that you need to act according to the common law, the natural law, and that says that you don't bring harm to anybody intentionally, that you do not take their property or steal, and that you don't deal fraudulently in your contracts. Those are the 3 basic things that make up common law. And if you abide by those 3 rules, then you don't see things like that happening. But what happened is these people decided that because they were asserting their rights, quote unquote, that gave them the right to infringe other people's rights, and that's just simply not true. So they got what they deserved. They shot 2 police officers, and later they were shot themselves. Once you escalate to conflict, you leave yourself no room to try and discuss anything. And what's the point of issuing a notice of intent and a claim of right if you're just going to use that as some fictitious basis that would give you the right to harm others? It just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, what CBC did with this is they decided that that was enough evidence to prove that anybody who asserts their freedoms is a terrorist. And we all know that this is the party line as far as most governments are concerned, that anybody that wishes to assert their adulthood and not live under the constraints of statutes, which you can still do, and not violate common law. I mean, to me it doesn't make any sense. People have got to act responsibly. You've got to be an adult. You have got to understand the responsibility that comes with rights. And if you don't, if you think you can just do things willy-nilly with impunity just because you're asserting your rights, it's coming from the wrong place. The point is to try to avoid conflict, and asserting your rights with notice of intent that you do not wish harm on anyone is a peaceful remedy. And in my opinion, it's the only remedy. And we would all be much better if we lived with conscience and stuck to those principles instead of thinking that we have the right to harm others just because. So that's all I've got for this, and I'll probably post another video on another topic. Thanks.